expected to grow. Just obstacles set in the road, that a result of me selling my soul. The story I'm telling is cold, but yet it's what everyone knows. The white man's the devil is known. America was never our home, only a place of captivity, save facility, hating, disfigure me. They claim that I'm lazy, be killing me. Maybe this slavery draining my energy. 400 years and counting, the trail of my tears is countless. Main fact that I'm here is astounding, but I can't wait till this shit is surrounded. Ready to tangle my king and the angel, be ready to rap. Cracking the sky, nuclear missiles will make it official. I'm capturing every cracker surviving. Put them all in chains where they need to be, slavery for me. And let the whole world see that with them in the cage and safer in the streets. Put the dog on a leash, get resolved for the beast. 144, get the ruler show, we could all be at peace. As soon as the trumpets are sound, your kingdom we busting it down. The only way justice is found, the time for your judgment is now.
Do you see just how it feels? Payback is a dog. It's a dog. Payback is a dog. It's a dog. Payback is a dog. It's a dog. Payback is a dog.
Look, ain't no remorse in my blood slim. It won't be no compromise. Now it's time to feed the worms. Watch his body turn to flies. I clutch iron while you trust the lies. The next Glock I buy gon' be Gen 5. I get it customized. And sending shots off like farewell. Praying payback come back around like a carousel. Still remember your Honda's words ringing in my head like bells. Said you in this body, you fit a Lord, fuck the cartel. Triangle choke, apply pressure to the game like I did Vondale. Payback's a bitch in a dress, she a bombshell. Revenge is dish served cold, I just hope they making oxtail. Glock fresh out the box, I swear it got that new car smell. Made myself a target in the world of mad shooters. Devils design fire for our babies to pass through. In the day of our king's reign, I'll be overzealous. They bought my jealous, I bought brand new parabellums.
Do you see just how it feels? Payback is a dog. It's a dog. Payback is a dog. It's a dog. Payback is a dog. It's a dog. Payback is a
They killed, give me Isaiah 14 and 21. They did the same thing to my people. So you said that they put millions of my houses. Yes, you said, sir. Should a murderer go to jail for murdering? Absolutely. Should a thief go to jail when he steals? Absolutely. Should a robber pay back the money he robbed? Absolutely. So why shouldn't the white man pay for what he did? That's right. That's right.
Do you see just how it feels? Payback is a dog. It's a dog. Payback is a dog. It's a dog. Payback is a dog. It's a dog. Payback is a dog. It's a dog.
I'm in a hell of a hole, was never expected to grow. Just obstacles set in the road, that a result of me selling my soul. The story I'm telling is cold, but yet it's what everyone knows. The white man's the devil is known. America was never our home, only a place of captivity, save facility, hating, disfigure me. They claim that I'm lazy, be killing me. Maybe this slavery draining my energy. 400 years and counting, the trail of my tears is countless. Main fact that I'm here is astounding, but I can't wait till this shit is surrounded. Ready to tangle my king and the angel, be ready to rap. Cracking the sky, nuclear missiles pistols and make it official. I'm capturing every cracker surviving. Put them all in chains where they need to be. Slavery for me. And let the whole world see that with them in the cage and safer in the streets. Put the dog on a leash. Get resolved for the beast. 144, get the ruler show, we could all be at peace. As soon as the trumpets are sound, your kingdom we busting it down. The only way justice is found, the time for your judgment is now.
You'll see just how it feels. Payback is a dog. It's a dog. Payback is a dog. It's a dog. Payback is a dog. It's a dog. Payback is a
Look, ain't no remorse in my blood slim. It won't be no compromise. Now it's time to feed the worms. Watch his body turn to flies. I clutch iron while you trust the lies. The next Glock I buy gon' be Gen 5. I get it customized. And sending shots off like farewell. Praying payback come back around like a carousel. Still remember your Honda's words ringing in my head like bells. Said you in his body, you fit the Lord, fuck the cocktail. Triangle choke, apply pressure to the game like I did Vondale. Payback's a bitch in a dress, she a bombshell. Revenge is served cold, I just hope they making oxtail. Glock fresh out the box, I swear it got that new car smell. Made myself a target in a world of mad shooters. That was designed fire for our babies to pass through it. And the day of our king's reign, I'll be overzealous. They bought my jealous, I bought brand new parabellums.
someday you'll see just how it feels. Payback is a dog. It's a dog. Payback is a dog. It's a dog. Payback is a dog. It's a dog. Payback is a dog. It's a dog.
They killed, give me Isaiah 14 and 21. They did the same thing to my people. So you said that they put millions of my yes, you said, sir. Should a murderer go to jail for murdering?
Absolutely.
Should a thief go to jail when he steals?
Absolutely.
Should a robber pay back the money he robbed?
Absolutely.
So why shouldn't the white man pay for what he did? That's right. That's right.
Someday you'll see just how it feels. Payback is a dog. It's a dog. Payback is a dog. It's a dog. Payback is a dog. It's a dog. Payback is a dog.
All right. Shalom. Shalom, Israel. All right. Let's see. Get my angle straight. All right. Shalom, Israel. We're the Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge. Started out at 1 West 125th Street, Harlem, New York. I'm the commanding General Yohana. We are not affiliated with any other Israelite group or any Christian organization. Tonight is the history class. One thing we do in the ISUPK is make sure that we are well versed in our history, not only the history as it pertains to the Bible, but our history as it pertains to so-called Blacks, Latinos, and Native Americans. Not only here, but when I say here, I mean in America, but also in Central and South America. We teach our history because it's very important for us to be aware of the atrocities, the crimes that have been committed against our people. we as uh, we as so-called black and brown people have a typically we have a negative disposition when it comes to history. Oftentimes because of the pain that that it brings, because of the pain, because of our oppression, because of the torture, because again, all of the crimes that have been committed against our people, we oftentimes have a negative disposition um, to history, not wanting to know, not wanting to remember, not wanting to be aware. That is absolutely a the opposite of what we should be doing. That is a function of Christianity. That is a function of the Christian church teaching our people that we just need to focus on trying to be happy and doing whatever our heart's desires. Uh, that is a function of the idea of, to each his own. And God knows my heart, and God is still working on me, and all of these things that the Christian church says. All of that is a function um, of how and why our people have gotten to the point that we have no problem being so disconnected from history. You look at other nations, whether it be America, you think about 9/11. They are still saying that it will never be forgotten because a crime was committed against them from another nation of people, and they will never forget it. You think about the so-called Holocaust, Jewish people, they're not going to let that go. They're not going to let that go. And even with this whole Israeli and Palestine conflict, they're not going to let that go either. Even the Palestinians aren't going to let that go. Which, by the way, uh, everyone needs to be fully aware that the true children of Israel, so-called blacks, Hispanics, and Native Americans, have absolutely nothing to do with that conflict. That is between them. We don't have anything to do with it. There was a complete terrorist attack that happened in Indianapolis I believe it was over the weekend. I can't recall if it was Friday or Saturday, where this terrorist, this Palestinian woman, drove a car into one of our schools, into a school of the ISUPK. She is on camera admitting that she did it on purpose, and she's using I can't say it's an excuse, but because she was very clear about her actions, about how she just had to do something because of the injustices that are happening over in the Gaza Strip and in Palestine. I shouldn't say injustices because that has nothing to do with me. Because of the events that are happening over in Palestine and the unaliving of children and older individuals and the like. On both. Now, she was speaking specifically on what's happened to so-called Palestinians. The reality is, again, we don't have a dog in that fight. If you are Black, Latino, or Native American, you absolutely should not care and be comfortable with that. Specifically, if for no other reason, no other no other nation cares or has cared when we have been the victim of centuries of oppression, centuries of destruction. No other nation had any concern about that. So those things that are happening over there are about them, and our position is that's it. It stops right there. But understand, you so-called Palestinians, you so-called Jewish people, understand that the 12 tribes of Israel are so-called Blacks, Latinos, and Native Americans, and you would be wise to leave us alone. You would be wise to leave us alone because the Most High, particularly in this body, the ISUPK, the home of the truth, the Most High is with us. You would be wise to leave us alone and you focus on whatever you need to outside of the ISUPK. All right. But this is why the history class and knowing our history is so important. This is why it's so important. Those other nations, they're very in tune with their history, and it galvanizes them. We are so destroyed and so broken down that we would rather forget our history. We would rather forget our history. We would rather believe that our history is so-called American history. We would rather believe that American history, which is basically, from our perspective, slavery, Martin Luther King, and Jim Crow, we want that to be in the past, and now we want to move forward and kumbaya, and again, God loves everybody, and that's what we want because it's easier, because it's not as painful, because it allows us to look at our oppressor as if they're not. Once you start getting into the history of our existence here, you quickly see where in Deuteronomy, the 28th chapter, it says that the Most High will going to send enemies, that they are our enemies. These nations are our enemies, particular the main oppressor, who is the primary nation here in America. They are our enemies. And the more we're in tune with the atrocities and the crimes that have happened against our nation, the more we'll realize that. The more we'll realize that. And then the more you come into this truth, and the more you come into class, and the more you get yourself locked in, you'll fully understand why it's so important to follow the law, statutes, and commandments. Because that's our salvation. The law, statutes, and commandments are our protection from the oppressor. That's absolutely what it is. We just don't know it. We don't know it because we haven't taken the time. To understand not only the scriptures outside, not what Christianity teaches. The Bible has nothing to do with Christianity. It has nothing to do with religion. It is a culture. It is a heritage of a people, and it has been completely hijacked. And everybody feels like that's so-called Christian's book or so-called oppressor's book. It absolutely is not. Black man, Latino man, Native American man, that is your book. All right. Let's see. Oh, Salakia. Let me give a courtesy to. I can kind of went into. Let me give a courtesy to the brothers. Shalom, Yahweh Shem Shabbat Thumb. To the sisters, Yahweh Shemar Thumb by Shem Yahweh Shah. All right. Let's see. Obviously, Yahweh says, Salaki, I've seen so many Israelites out there marching and infuriated over the war and see no parallels with our own struggle. Exactly. There are so-called, like you said, quote unquote Israelites. Blacks, Hispanics, and well, I know black folks. I don't know too much about Latinos and Native Americans, but listen, the tribe of Judah jumps on everything. The tribe of Judites jump on everything. Any fad, anything that seems to be popular at the time, we're gonna jump in it, and that's what we're doing with all this marching, and we're so upset, and nobody has thought, right? Even objectively, we talked about it before. Even objectively, if you understand the history of that land since about 1947, which you had Palestinians living there, World War II ends, and now they moved. The UN moved so-called Jewish Israelis into that land and displaced the Palestinians. Objectively, that's still our land. That's still the land of the 12 tribes of Israel. But objectively, you can understand how if somebody displaces you from your home, that would be a problem. You can see that would be that would be this, that might give you a certain disposition, right? And these Palestinians are very well aware of their history, and so they feel some kind of way about it. And so the parallels easily, if you can be outraged behind the Palestinians' perspective, then you should definitely understand, if no one else, the Native Americans' perspective here. The Native Americans' perspective in America is, listen, if you can't understand that, but you can understand Palestinians, that you're the problem. You're the problem. You're a huge part of the problem. Let me say it that way. You're a huge part of the problem. because there's no way you should be able to recognize a so-called injustice for them. There's no way you should be able to recognize that that's an injustice and that's wrong, but yet our brothers and sisters here who were discovered, by Columbus, you don't understand the plight. You don't understand how similar, how these reservations are basically the Gaza Strip. That is again, objectively, you should be able to recognize that. So you are absolutely right, Officer Yagada. I don't understand, how these so-called Israelites out here marching, like you said, infuriated over the war. They see no parallels with our own struggle. It's outrageous. It's absolutely outrageous. All right, we're gonna get some quick shout outs. We got a few people in here so far. Hopefully, some people keep coming. Obviously, we got Officer Yagada in the building. Shalom. Shalom. We got Officer Quashah in the building. Shalom, brother. We got Sister Coco in the building. All right. So tonight's class, as you all can look at the title, is a direct. This is the result of a direct request from Officer Yagada last week. Officer Yagada brought up a particular film last week, and he requested that we cover it in the history class. So we are going to definitely get into it. All right. For those who don't know, Birth of a Nation was the movie that was brought up in last week's class. All right. And Birth of a Nation is well, before I get there, there's two Births of a Nation, all right, or two movies called Birth of a Nation. One, which most of us are probably more familiar with, came out in, I think it was 2014, 2015, something like that. And that was No Sweat. So, where's my mouth? Yeah, no sweat, no sweat. As soon as you said it, I was like, okay, I got it. That's what we're gonna do then. No sweat at all. So, yeah, most of us may be familiar with the movie that came out. I think it's like I said, it was 2014, 15, something like that. Where what was that brother's name? Nate. Get it right. What was that brother's last name? Nate. Let me get it right. I can't believe I can't remember that brother's name. If anybody knows what his name is, let me know. I just had it. I know I got it up here somewhere. Rocky. What brother's name? Nate. And the brother is from DC, not DC. He's actually from brother's from Norfolk who did that movie. That quickly ran out of my head. Come on. There we go. I could not think of that to save my life. Lucky. The water. Nate Parker, who's a brother who is from Norfolk. All right. He did a movie. Now that Birth of a Nation was about Nat Turner's revolt. That Birth of a Nation was about Nat Turner's revolt. All right, we're getting some more folks up in here. Okay. Young man Jarion out of New Orleans. Shalom, brother. Good to see you again. All right. Got Trooper Shamaga Bar. Shalom, Yabashon Shabakata. All right. So yeah, y'all might be familiar. Y'all let me know. Kind of who's familiar with the Nate Parker's recent Birth of a Nation movie, which outlined Nat Turner's revolt. Who's familiar with that? Who's seen it? We're gonna get into some of that tonight. Kind of like, who's familiar with that version? Let's see. All right, Sister Nazam in the building. Sister Nazam in the building. Yeah, but Shamala thought about Shemi Shastas. All right, she's familiar. I'm see Yagadar is familiar. All right, all right. So now, who's familiar with the original? The original that came out about 100 years before that one. It came out in 1915. I know Officer Yagadar is familiar. Who else is familiar? Not that you've necessarily seen it, but are you familiar that there was an original Birth of a Nation that came out in 1915? And do you have some perspective on what it was about? Now, if you were in Officer Yagadar's Hebrew Lashon Kodash class on Friday, and you probably had some perspective on it. All right. But let's see who's familiar with it. Kana La'a. We got 2 yeses already. Who else? Who's familiar with it? All right, no sweat. Anybody who ain't familiar, you're gonna be familiar tonight. We're gonna get it tonight. All right. So the birth of a nation. Okay. All right. Shemaga Bar said Khan Wakan. Okay. So anybody who's not familiar with the original, Birth of a Nation was basically the foundation of not only Hollywood but of general movies, the technique, the quote unquote art of it. It all has its foundation with this movie that was a complete piece of propaganda. All right, this came out like I said in 1915, and its plot was that it was set in South Carolina. That was the setting of the movie, right? And it followed the community in this fictitious town right before the end of the Civil War and after the end of the Civil War. All right. So go through a quick history class. So we had the Civil War. It was over. What was the time period? Who can tell me what the time period was called directly after the Civil War? What do they call that time period? Directly after the Civil War, there's a period of about I want to say it's 5 to 10 years, if I remember correctly. It has a particular name. Who can tell me what that is? Who can tell me what that time period is? During that time were um, communities that needed to be rebuilt, right? There were local governments that needed to be reestablished. Um, all right, we got a couple of answers, and you are both correct. Yagadak says Reconstruction area. Absolutely. Sister Nazama Na also said correctly the Reconstruction. Exactly. So in that Reconstruction, what basically happened was because the North won, initially, the North kept troops in the South after the war was over to make sure that things didn't just revert back. That things didn't just revert back to the way they were. That people didn't just start putting people back in slavery. Although, again, we've covered it numerous times. The 13th Amendment allows for legalized slavery as long as you've been convicted of a crime. But in order to make sure that things didn't completely take a U-turn, the North, the Union, kept uh, kept troops in the South to help with reestablishing, kind of the norm, if you will. All right. Young man John in the building. Shalom. Y'all about to thought. Good to see you, brother. All right. So that was Reconstruction period, right? So this movie is set. This movie, the original 1915 Birth of a Nation, was set shortly before and shortly after. And basically, long story short, and we're gonna get into some articles where it talks about the specifics of it. But long story short, the idea was uh, the narrative of the movie was Reconstruction is terrible. Um, the oppressor is now petrified because all these free black people and all these free black people want to do, all these black men want to do is get a hold of this oppressive woman. And they don't care. They're going to do almost anything to get a hold of this oppressive woman. And who can tell me? Let me see. All right, y'all, now you're getting ahead of me. Oh, so y'all guys said the movie was originally titled The Klansman. You're absolutely right. You're getting ahead of me. You're getting ahead. I'm about to tell you can't answer no one question. So I'll just play. But no, he's absolutely right. But that takes me into what the no sweat, no sweat, brother, no sweat. That takes me into think about because it was absolute propaganda. The whole idea was, like I said, Reconstruction is horrible. It should never have happened. You got all these oversex crazed free black men, and all they want to do is get their hands on Seesaw. And think about what Officer Yagaddar just said, right? Because it has, in a weird way, a happy ending to a certain extent from their perspective, from the perspective of the oppressor. I'm gonna bring this back up. Who can guess who the hero was in the movie as it was presented? Let's see. Somebody, Salaki, somebody other than Officer. I was just playing, man. Just want to let's see though. Who can guess? Given the original name of the movie, who was the hero? Given the narrative, given the plot, this is all the negative things that was happening after the Civil War was over. That's what this movie is presenting. So let's see who can guess who the hero was. All right. Oh, Salaki, my rib is in the building. I have a Shamal the Thub Hashem Yahushua. All right. And she said the oppressor, which is true, but I need something a little more specific. I'm looking for something a little more specific than just the oppressor. Yes, that's a true answer. That's not wrong. But there is a specific entity that was painted as the hero, that was presented as the hero in this movie. And Officer Yagaddar gave you a strong hint. Gave a strong hint of who this might have been. Yonder boy, no sweat. No sweat. You too out. All right, you right there. I don't listen. We don't have to. Sister Raya, you are too close to not put the actual answer. So I'm not gonna accept that last answer you gave me because you're too close. And I know, I'm sure you can you can guess who this is. All right, Sister Nazam said the so-called white man. Okay, that's also true. That's also true. The oppressor, the so-called white man, yes, but there's a specific. Yeah, okay, y'all gonna get it now. There's a specific organization that was set up and portrayed as the hero in this movie from 1915 that was talking about the South shortly before and shortly after the Civil War, or during and after the Civil War. So who can guess who that is? I know y'all listen. I don't want to give it to y'all because everybody collectively is gonna be like, "Oh yeah, I should have got that." Brother Stephen Baldwin in the building. Shalom, brother. All right. So I'm gonna catch Brother Stephen Baldwin up real quick. What we're talking about is the 1915 version of uh, Birth of a Nation. You know, most of us, a lot of us are familiar with um, uh, the one that came out 2014, 15. I can't remember exactly the date. That was done by Nate Parker about um, uh, Nat Turner's revolt. But a lot of us may not be aware that that was the second movie that was titled Birth of a Nation. The first one came out in 1915. It was basically about the this fictional story about life in the South during and shortly after the Civil War. And it was absolute propaganda, and it helped to, it was basically the foundation of so much of cinema and Hollywood. And we're going to get into how and why that is. But the question was because so with the presentation, and I'm recapping, the presentation was reconstruct the Civil War was bad, Reconstruction was terrible. Now we got all these free black people, and they're coming for the oppressor's woman, and they're gonna get them no matter what. And then this particular organization comes and is presented as the hero. Uh, I'm not really talking fast. Okay, but she got the right answer. Y'all give her a hand. It's not necessarily believed, but it is the KKK. This movie presented the KKK as if they were the savior of the South, the savior of the South. And this movie was huge. This movie was an absolute blockbuster. Okay. Matter of fact, it was the first full length feature film. All right. It was the first full length feature film. Now, this is back in, 1915. All right. If anybody, is familiar with the history of cinema and stuff like that, back then they didn't have sound. They were all silent movies. They would have a scene and then you have to read something. And then have a scene, you have to read some more. Right? That's just the way it was. All black and white. You know what I mean? And because of that, most of the films were relatively short. Most of the films were relatively short. If it was approaching an hour, that was considered a pretty long film at that point. All right. So I'm gonna ask this question. I'm sure Officer Yagadar knows. I'm gonna ask him if you don't mind to hold off just a little bit, right? Anybody who's familiar with the movie, do you have any perspective on how long the movie was? You have any perspective on how long the movie was, or is, I should say, because it's still around. This was during a time where, like I said, if it was about an hour long, that was considered very long. That's considered very long. The typical approach back then was just short movies. Short movies. Yeah, you would go to the movie theater, but you're in there a pretty short time. You think about it, all you're doing is reading and watching silence. That got old pretty quick. Salakia. Sister Nazama Ma. Sorry, Salakia Nazama Na. You said lynch. I'm not sure what that's in reference to, sister. Help me out. Let me make sure I know what you're saying, all right? But yeah, it was considered, a pretty long movie if you were approaching the hour. For the second time, I'll just tell you. This movie, well, look at that. Sister Ryan. All right. Okay. Obviously, Agadar's rib in the building. Shalom says. She said 2 hours. La'ab. You would, because that would be enough time, right? If you're approaching the hour, 2 hours is okay. We stretching this thing out a little bit. I mean, we done already doubled the time at this point. Sister Ryan got it though. This was a 3-hour movie in 1915 where all they were doing was sitting in silence, watching and reading. And this thing was an absolute blockbuster. I'm going to show y'all in a minute who's familiar with Star Wars. Everybody's familiar with Star Wars. It's like Avatar is another one. All the blue aliens. Those were blockbusters. Those were huge movies when they came out. And this thing was on those levels, on that level, as a success. Everybody wanted to go see it. It was absolutely a success, and it created the foundation of a lot of cinematic technique and essentially Hollywood. Our propaganda, the oppression that we went through, basically was the foundation that Hollywood is built on. All right, so we're gonna get into some of it. We're gonna get into some of these articles real quick. Let me see. But again, all of this is very important to be aware of our history, right? And we brought this scripture up before, but we're gonna bring it up one more time. Slovakia. Deuteronomy 32:7. Let's see. All right. There we go. And try to make this a little. No, we'll do it that way. There we go. Deuteronomy 32:7. So remember the days of old. We are supposed to remember the days of old. Our history, again, is so important to us. Every other nation understands that. Every other nation on the planet understands that their history is important and is to be remembered. It is to be remembered. It's not something that we should just disconnect from. We so quickly, I think I told this story before, but there was a live, not live, but a more recent version of Roots that came out a few years back, 5 or 6 years. I can't remember what it was. And I made my son sit down and watch it. Made my son sit down and watch it with me. And this was before I was in the truth, but it was, it's good perspective to make sure you have, right? Because these things happen. And when you look at a lot of these history books, they don't even want to call it slavery anymore. They want to call it involuntary migration and things of that nature, as if we were just quote unquote immigrants who came over here and just decided to put ourselves at the mercy of this oppressive, wicked, bloodthirsty nation. No, that didn't happen. But I remember at the time talking to different people that I knew. Everybody's in the world at this point, and I'm like, "Yeah, y'all, did y'all check out the show?" And they were like, "What you want to watch that for?" And I was like, "What do you mean?" And they were like, "Nah, I don't want. That stuff is old, and and ain't nobody I know, that don't even really affect us no more. And that's one of the biggest problems with not knowing our history, with not having a relation and a perspective and an understanding about what happened to our people. You think it doesn't affect us anymore. You think it doesn't matter anymore because it's so old. When we talk class after class about the techniques, the playbook, this professor has about a handful of plays that he runs, and you can look in history and see him run the play, and you can look now and see him run the same play. We talked about Drape the Mania a few weeks ago, and then we talked about Excited Delirium. It's the same thing. We talked about how Presser said back then that slavery benefited black folks, and we see DeSantis saying the exact same thing now. It's so important for us to have an understanding of what our people and our ancestors went through, and it's such an epidemic in our community that we're so easy to let it go, and that's largely because of Christianity. Because Christianity tells you got to love everybody. Christianity tells you got to be happy with everybody. You got to forgive everybody, and you don't need to worry about any type of justice. You'll get your justice when you die, is what Christianity teaches us then and taught us then and teaches us now. It's the same thing. We're going to get into it. There used to be a slave Bible. Who's heard of that? Who's heard of that? The slave Bible. I know several of us have. There was a slave Bible that they allowed our people to read that reinforced the idea that their enslavement was just their lot in life, and that's just what they had to deal with. You can almost understand more being lulled into that back then, because at least they presented something that was altered, right? They presented something that didn't have all the scriptures. It didn't have all the understanding. Now our people are so caught up in Christianity. It has all of the scriptures there. You just need to come to class so you can understand the breakdown, so you can get in ISUPK and understand the truth of the Bible, so you can get in the truth under command and General Yohanan. The information's here now. Brothers and sisters will come into this class or catch a video and still not come into the truth. Still not understand what the actual truth of the Bible is. Still be disconnected from our history in a way that then ties us or ties them to the oppressor's history. Everybody knows what happened with the Revolutionary War and all of that over here. That's not our history. That's not our history. How do we know? Because when the Revolutionary War happened and they won their independence, we were still slaves. And we're still slaves now. That's how you know it's not our history. But we're so in tune with it, we want to walk around calling ourselves Americans and being proud of the country and all that stuff. No. Not knowing our history perpetuates that. All right. But that's why we should be remembering the days of old. Consider the years of many generations. Our ancestors went through horrible, horrific experiences under this oppressor. So often we want to feel like, well, we're doing a little bit better now, so it's not that bad. Because we individually might be doing better. We individually might have a pretty decent place to live, living in what we feel is a pretty decent neighborhood, so on and so forth. Not understanding that our people as a whole are destroyed, are absolutely destroyed. And so we feel like because we're doing okay, then I don't have to worry about it. We're fine. I don't even need to think about what happened when I wasn't here. That doesn't affect me. That doesn't affect me. Sister Aya, I can get there we go. Sister Aya said, Christians love to be blind. Absolutely. Absolutely. Love to be blind and ignorant. Love to be blind and ignorant to anything that doesn't give them some kind of high and make them feel good. Any real life practical understanding of oppression and what we should be doing and following the law, statutes, and commandments, they don't want to hear none of that. They don't want to hear none of that because that don't make me feel good. So I don't want to. I'm not interested in that because God loves everybody. And I don't have to worry about the law anymore because Jesus came and ended it and so on and so forth. And it's all of this, it's willful ignorance. And that willful ignorance destroys us. It matters what our forefathers went through. Because ask thy father, he will show thee. This is another example of how our communities are destroyed. The father's role is to pass down the history of the nation, of the family, of everything that our ancestors went through. Our homes are so destroyed that a large chunk of them don't even have the father in it. A large chunk of our brothers and sisters now may not even know who their father is. And again, the disconnect from history, even if they do, we don't know our history. If you're not in the ISUPK, you're not going to get it. If you are in the Christian church, your history is going to be slavery. Slavery and Martin Luther King. And now how we need to love each other and nobody, we just gotta wait till we pass away, and then we're gonna go to heaven in the sky with, the naked babies and angels and stuff. That's how we're destroyed, though. Our fathers don't know. If they're not in the UPK, they don't even know our history. They can't pass it down. But it says, ask thy father, and he will show thee thy elders, and they will tell thee. The elders, that's where you are. That's what you're looking at. The elders, the ISUPK, the men, the priests, and prophets of the Lord. That's why we're here, so we can make sure our history is known, that we remember in the days of old, and that we consider the generations. All right? All right, so let's get into this. How this disgusting movie gave this kingdom an absolute gold mine that's called Hollywood. All right, this is Birth of a Nation is 3 hours of racist propaganda. That's exactly what it is. Starting from the Civil War and ending with the Ku Klux Klan riding in to save the South from black rule during Reconstruction. That was the presentation. That was the presentation. Griffith, which was I believe he was the director, portrayed the emancipated slaves as heathens and unworthy of being free, as uncivilized, as primarily concerned with passing laws so they could marry white women and prey on them. Because Dick Lair, author of Birth of a Nation, how a legendary filmmaker and a crusading editor reignited American Civil War, tells NPR. So this was the absolute presentation of the movie. Absolute propaganda, not true, right? But so popular. So popular. So let's who can guess where the movie was who can guess where the movie was premiered? Who wants to take a guess? Where do we think this movie first got played that made it so popular, given the nature of the storyline? Who wants to give it a shot where we thought this movie was first premiered? Let's just give it a guess. Obviously, I said I'm going to wait. But why? All right. Sister Nazamana knows. She's to California, and she's absolutely right. Get that sister a hand. It first premiered in California. When I first started doing some of this research, I was like, this thing had to come out somewhere in the South. It had to come out in Atlanta or I don't know, Mississippi. It had to come out somewhere in the South because it was so popular. No, this came out in California. in Los Angeles, California, and it was super popular. Everybody wanted to see it. Stephen Baldwin, get that brother a hand. He said California. That's exactly where it first premiered. And even in California, it was popular. Uh, Now, of course, because of it was pure propaganda, everybody understands now how horrible it is. But even now, it's praised in certain ways. We're gonna get into it. Salaki. All right. This says, let me scroll back up just a little bit because what it's talking about is how evil the movie is. Matter of fact, I'll just read it. It says Griffith's understanding of the past was based on a twisted account, and today it's easy to imagine that a movie like that would be a flop and be forgotten. But the birth of a nation was far from falling into oblivion, led to the birth of Hollywood. Because Lear says the film was the Avatar and Star Wars of 1915, a runaway hit. That's what this was. So what that tells you is there was a market. There was a market for the story that was being told. People liked to see it. It was something that they enjoyed watching. Us being portrayed, and it's going to go into it, but us being portrayed as absolute savages who wanted nothing but to sleep with the oppressor's woman. I believe there's one scene in there where, now I was about to say a brother, so here's the other piece of it. None of us acting back then. None of us acting back in 1915. So who was everybody in the film? Everyone in the film was one race of people, although they presented themselves a different way. It was nothing but oppressors, nothing but Edomites dressed up in blackface. Every character who was portrayed to be black was just some Edomite in blackface. Obviously, Yagadar's rib says, no wonder they keep making movies about slavery. Exactly. That's a good point. I mean, it set the benchmark. It set the absolute benchmark. When you portray black people in this negative sense, it got a whole lot of support everywhere. Everywhere. Stephen Baldwin said, white people, right? Everybody in the movie was white. Everybody in the movie was white, portraying themselves in blackface. So what you had was one scene where the former slave is so interested and so, he can't control himself for this oppressive woman, this Edomite. He's approaching her, and she's so petrified. If I recall, because let me be clear, I haven't seen this movie. I refuse to watch it. But but I'm aware of it. All right, and I'm sure tonight, obviously, y'all gonna correct me anywhere I'm wrong. Why? All right, but he's approaching her, and she jumps off, I believe, a bridge or a cliff or something, and falls to her unalive. Because they are so petrified that these are the things that have happened. This is what was portrayed in this movie. These are the kind of things that were portrayed in this movie. All right. But Slovakia. Yes, it says after the screening in Los Angeles, the film got a big thumbs up. The critics were raving. People were on their feet cheering at the climax of the film when the Klan is seen as a healing force, restoring order to the chaos of the South during Reconstruction. And you have a quote down here. It says, the worst thing about the birth of a nation is how good it is. This was the perspective and is the perspective. Salaki is the perspective about this film. It's so good It's terrible content, but it's done so well. It's terrible content, but you got to separate that from the art of it. And this is the suppressor. This is what they do, which is why I don't know how y'all feel about it, but I don't listen to R. Kelly music no more because I'm not. Listen, you're an evil bastard. What I'm not going to do is support any of your music knowing that you are an absolute predator. That's what we should not do. We should have a standard in our nation that says, no, we're not going to support that. I don't care how much talented you are. What you're doing is evil. And because of that, I'm not supporting any of it. That's what we should do. But because of Christianity, because we align ourselves with the suppressor, we even say things like that. I hear brothers say all the time, okay, what you say? R. Kelly music, this is good, man. No, it's not good enough. How about that? Nothing is. For me to disregard the predator that he was and is. Salakia, Sister Nizamana said, oh, so that birth, we're going to get into how it did. We're going to get it. That's a great question. We're going to get into how it did. All right. But it absolutely did. The quick answer is yes. We're going to get into how. All right. I see Yagadar says Khan jumps off a cliff, but be at every NBA game looking for. Exactly. Listen, who was I talking to? I think it was Trooper Kazaki. We were talking at one point, and I think the next couple classes we're going to talk about Shesaw's role as a sexual deviant during slavery. We're going to talk about that because on one end they're so petrified, on the other end they're so attracted, and on the other end they're going to absolutely throw any brother who aligns himself with them under the bus as soon as they deem it appropriate. And it was even worse back when we were fully enslaved as chattel, as property. It was even worse then. Sister Aya said, twist the narrative. Right. They absolutely twist the narrative. But that's the piece that our people end up picking up as we aligned ourselves. There was a time even later on, when we were still, segregated, but we had built these communities and things, and everybody knew everybody in the community. And shortly before the civil rights movement and all that, we were by ourselves and to ourselves. And guess what happened when somebody found out in the neighborhood that you were doing something with a kid that wasn't appropriate? Well, the neighborhood was gonna handle it. The only time that would not happen is when somebody in the family then hid it, or the family didn't want it. And then when we want to keep this on the hush, which is also a problem that plagues our community. We don't know what justice is because we haven't gotten it here. We don't know what justice looks like because we haven't gotten it here. So then we don't know what justice should look like when somebody violates our child. So many of us don't know. If you're not in the Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge, you don't know what justice looks like. You think justice is, well, we just won't say nothing, and we'll make sure that we'll make sure whatever uncle or cousin that is that we know has a problem with children, we'll just make sure that he's not around any children. And then that's supposedly justice. Or worse, we'll get in situations where you'll have a parent that's just more interested in their happiness. You'll have a single mother who has a daughter who gets a boyfriend and he touches that child, and then that woman says, well, we're going to have to make sure that he's not around. We're going to make sure that he's not around, or you're going to have to suck that up because I need to be happy and you just need to chill out, and so on and so forth. And then it perpetuates that type of behavior over and over and over again. We don't know what justice looks like. Oh, the water said, damn right. We don't know what it looks like. So, like your sister said, Father, not sure where you're going. Help me out, sir. Help me out. I appreciate it. All right, let me see. I'm gonna get back to this article. So there was some there was some pushback because shortly before, I want to say it was 1909, so a few years before, um, this movie came out. Uh, gotcha. Absolutely right. Right, because that happens too, even with fathers, uncles, cousins, and we just try to we'll make sure they ain't around them. We don't say nothing. We don't, there's no justice, and then that child is destroyed, and he's a potential predator walking around, whether it be in the family or out the family. He's still out here waiting to prey on some other child because we don't know what justice looks like, and we think being quiet is justice, and it's absolutely not. Not Hollywood, it's Sinwood. I think that's what Sister I is saying. Exactly. Delivered from this propaganda. Exactly. 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 All right. It says oh yeah, because there was some pushback. The NAACP had just been established, but we know the NAACP was backed by oppressors as well. So we always got to be cautious when that's the case. But there was apparently some type of um, backlash, uproar. There was some attention, right? That people were like, no, this is not cool. So let's see what happened. It says the film's initial success drowned the voices of those who tried to protest. It was so successful that anybody coming up saying, hey, this is not right, so on and so forth, did not matter. Did not matter. This movie continued to make money and was a success. Because the civil rights movement was still quite young at the time. The NAACP had just incorporated a few years earlier, so the Los Angeles screenings were successful in spite of the outrage, as were New York City's. It even became the first movie ever to be screened at the White House. Woodrow Wilson reportedly called it history written in lightning. I think this article gets to it. Let me see before I say this. Nope, I want to go back. So he called it history written in lightning. The reality is this: all of that movie is absolute nonsense, right? It's easy to see that now. We can go in again if we know our history, if we're familiar with our history, then we can say, no, that movie is nonsense. That movie's an absolute lie, so on and so forth. But back then, guess what? People thought it was factual. People looked at this movie as if it was almost a documentary today. People absolutely believed it. And this is why it's the basis and the blueprint for Hollywood, the media, and all of that today. So often we know that we will look at how we're portrayed in the media, how we're portrayed on the news, and it's always basically the same type of things. We're lazy, we're drug addicts, we can't control our sexual desires, we don't have any initiative to get up and pull ourselves up by our bootstraps, right? All of that is, again, that's what we see today, and this is absolutely where it started. This was the most successful, and it was the first full-length movie played in the movie theater, and it was the first movie played in the White House. Says that movie, this Officer Yagdar said, he says that movie set the playbook for movies, news, politics, sports, etc. Exactly. This was the baseline. This was the benchmark. This is what this came out, and everybody said, "Wow, we can do that. We can just present it like that. We could just make up these stories and put our full opinions on the screen and let people just soak it up." and they're willing to soak it up. They want to see this. Now you fast forward, and every time you turn on the TV, every time you look at a YouTube video, every time you're on social media, everywhere, it's us being portrayed in the absolute worst light. And it makes it so easy for us to then down ourselves as well as the other nations downing us. Where if nothing else, we should have compassion on each other. We should have compassion on each other. But then we fall right into it. We fall right into the propaganda and everything that was set up from this movie. Lightning, it's like a history written in lightning. It was so fast. And another thing I want to say, it was successful in Los Angeles and in New York. This idea that the North was just this wonderful place for so-called blacks, Latinos, and Native Americans, that so-called racism and oppression did not happen in the North. This idea that the North was such a savior for enslaved people because of the Emancipation Proclamation. This same movie was a huge success in New York. This same movie. Sister Ryan says. Then it moved to facts and for schools to continue to blind us to the truth. Right, right. It was propaganda at one point. Then they make sure they used facts for a time, but they limited the information that they really shared. Again, it's always basically slavery, Jim Crow, Martin Luther King. But once you stop there and you continue with the presentation, I saw something, it was years ago. I forgot who said it, but the comment just resonated with me. And a person said, "You can't." Especially, he said, "If you're white, you can't grow up in America and not be racist. If you're anything other than Black, Latino, or Native American, you can't grow up in America and not be racist because it's everywhere and it's purposeful. And they present it that way because it works. But that lets you know what these other nations really feel." I say it all the time. They don't have a lot of different plays, but they run those plays very well, and this is definitely one of them. Sister Ryan said they strategically erase our history, exactly, and then we make it easy for them. We make it easy for them by not knowing our history, by not being interested in knowing our history. Make it too easy for them to erase our history. I think most of us probably are aware that in the last year or so, those history books started terming slavery to involuntary immigration. You let that go on, then all of a sudden, a few generations from now, as it said, remember, consider the years of many generations. A few generations from now, the narrative might be we were never enslaved. Then what will that do? So why are you in this position? Why are you so oppressed? Why do you feel like you're oppressed? You had the same chances everybody else had. As soon as you erase our history, it validates the oppression, which is why we have to make sure that absolutely does not happen. Absolutely does not happen. All right, let me see. Um, like it says, how is racism defined? That is a great question. Let's look that up real quick because racism is a function of power. So let's look that up in case nobody has ever seen it before. That's not it. There it is. Matter of fact, let's see if I can pull this up. That is a great question. All right. All right, let's see. Yeah, I think that's it. All right. So the first definition says a belief that race is a fundamental determinant of uh, human traits and capabilities, and that racial differences produce an inherent superiority of a particular race. All right. That sounds like a good definition. That's not really the one that we have to deal with. Okay. That's just how you feel about a thing. How you feel about a thing doesn't affect people the way it has affected so-called blacks, Latinos, and Native Americans. So let's jump to the one that does. Second definition, it says the systematic oppression of a racial group to the social, economic, and political advantage of another, specifically white supremacy. The idea, and this is a lot of times what you hear, um, so Edomites, because they have this desire, this weird desire to want to be oppressed, and I think it's because that they look at it as um, they look at their history as a disadvantage. The fact that the truth is their ancestors were absolute savage beasts, and they want to disconnect from that. They can't because it's the history of this country, it's the oppression continues. But they have this desire to want to be disconnected from it and want to be, well, now that's reverse racism and this, that, and the third. And this is why that definition is so important. It's the systematic oppression. We don't have the power to systematically oppress anyone. And the proof of that is that we are systematically oppressed. That's why that definition is so important to know. All right. That was the Ayanda Bar. No sweat. That was a great question. Great question. All right. All right. Let's see. All right. It says long after 1915, the silent film continued to find audiences. Immediately after the film's release, the Ku Klux Klan experienced a surge in membership. It continued to use the film as a recruiting tool for decades after that. I'm not sure if we're going to get into it tonight or not, but there was one. Oh, no, here it is. Lucky, I just didn't highlight it. It says as a young journalist in the late 1970s, Lucky Lear infiltrated the Knights of the Ku Klux Klan for a story. He met their leader at the time, David Duke, who was there to recruit the next wave of Klansmen. Says Duke's idea of meeting was so like Duke's idea of a meeting was to show this film in which he stood there narrating it and adding his own very racist spin on events. And that's when it hit me, the real propaganda value for the Klan, not only way back when, but here it was like 6, 7 decades later. They were still using it. They were still using it. And while this particular one, I don't know if they use that or not, but again, as Officer Yagadar was saying, the propaganda is still used today. The propaganda is still used today, and it's still very effective. Let's see. My Rev said because they wanted to be heroes too. Right, right. Once this movie comes out and it presents the Klan as the heroes, their numbers surged. They had a huge increase in membership because, well, like she said, well, damn, I want to be a hero too. I want to be a hero too. So now the Klan was not about the oppression of black people, black and brown people. Now it's, well, it's needed because they need to help. They're saving white people. They're not oppressing black people. They're saving white people. This is the presentation. This is why we have to be. When the Bible says that he was the most subtile beast of the field, this is the proof of it. This is the absolute proof. The oppressor is not a very practically intelligent. He's not, but he is cunning. He absolutely is. Because while the civil rights leader in 1915 tried to get the film banned, The Birth of a Nation is still taught in film schools. For all of its repulsive imagery, the film stands as a massive leap in cinema. So let's find out, how is it that that's possible? Says he did things that hadn't been done before in terms of close-up, zooming the cameras in on faces, cross-cutting in dramatic Civil War battle scenes, not just taking a single static shot, all of which heighten the power, the impact, the drama, the emotion. Additionally, and this is going to go to Sister Nazama Anand's question, says Griffith was also the first to host test screenings of his work in progress, and he moved his filmmaking operation from the East Coast to Southern California to take advantage of its routinely pleasant weather. The rest of the industry would later follow suit, and Hollywood, even as a metonym, was born. That's the basis. That's how Hollywood, when you say, was this the start of Hollywood, sis? This is how. This is how. What he did in telling this horrific, wrong lie of a story was gave Hollywood the basis for how it should operate and where it should operate. He moved out there to take advantage of the weather. He didn't mess with his filming, so on and so forth. That's what created Hollywood, because other people started doing it. And then these techniques that he used, everybody, it was so amazing. It was so amazing. And this disconnect is what allows people not to care. Let's not look, well, I'm not going to get ahead of myself. How much time? We got a little time. All right. I remember say that's like the passion Christ where was their innovation to Christianity. All systematic recruitment with the oppressor reflection of Christ. Right. I think I get what you're saying. That's like the passion. Christ was their like an invitation to Christianity. Correct. That it was such a cinematic feature. It was so breathtaking, and the scenes were so, graphic and so on and so forth. But the whole time, to her point, the Passion of the Christ done by Mel Gibson, it was an oppressor that played Christ. The Edomite that played Christ. It's not what Christ looked like. That's not what Christ looked like. So it's the same thing. It was just something else that to use. It was more of a tool, and that's exactly what this was. And you can see the how it played out over the years. It was so successful. It was the first film that was shown in the White House. It was the first full feature film that was shown, period. And it was super successful, and it increased the numbers of the Ku Klux Klan, and it basically laid the groundwork for Hollywood. Here's some more. says it's really sort of the foundation of modern cinema. The movie is the foundation of modern cinema. I think in every sense. So historically, it's important in that regard, but you can't separate. At least I don't agree to. This is a quote. At least I don't agree to separate the technology prowess from the political baggage. Now, this is a black professor at the University of South Carolina, and he is in charge, I believe, of the film department. And his whole thing is we can't just separate that. But Esau can because it doesn't affect Esau. He says, I just think the way it's taught is more important than the fact that it's taught. Because if you talk about so like if you talk about it only as a technological achievement and the brilliance of D.W. Griffith, which again was the director, then I think that this is unfortunate. If you talk about it as representative of the racism and white supremacy and America's history in this regard, then I think that's a different story. Basically, what he's trying to say is, listen, if you're going to try to separate this piece of garbage and say, well, it wasn't accurate, and racism is terrible and all of that, but look at the quality of it. It's amazing. His point is, if you're going to present it that way, then nah. If you want to talk about the history and the time that it was in and how horrible a piece of work that this is, sure, it has some technological things in it, but let's talk about the truth of it. If you want to do that, then that's a different story. And that's again where we should be. You only are able to take that type of position on things, though, when you're aware of the truth of them. Now, here, when I believe it was on Yagadar's rib, let me bring that back up because she said, where's her comment? There we go. She said, no wonder they keep making movies about slavery, right? So check out what this brother also said about, again, the industry. Says if you plant seeds, this is again this professor at the University of Southern California. He says if you plant seeds, what grows from that seed is going to be based on what you planted. We say that all the time. We say that all the time in the Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge, which is why you are the seed of your father. You are what your father is. Because when you plant a seed, what grows from it is based on the seed you plant. So if you're trying to grow, so like it says, so if you're trying to grow marijuana, you probably don't want to plant tomatoes. Birth of a Nation is a film that represents racism. He says it is at the foundation of what would become Hollywood. So if this is at the root, then it shouldn't be a surprise when in the last few weeks there have been discussions about the lack of people of color being nominated for Oscars, so on and so forth. He says, in my mind, this is very much the branch that grew out of the tree that was Birth of Nation. Now he's talking about Oscars and people being nominated, but let's be real. As Officer Yagadar's rib said, they keep making movies about slavery. The propaganda, the presentation that is largely comes out of Hollywood, the music industry, all of that. It's meant to destroy our people. It's meant to set us up in a way that gives us the most negative disposition, the most negative presentation, and then we end up soaking it all up. We end up soaking it all up, and then you have a cycle. Then it just perpetuates itself. And his whole point was, well, that's what we should have expected because that's what Hollywood was based on. That's what it was founded on. Obviously, Yagadar says that's the same BS they do when it comes to America. Look at how wonderful it is despite the blood that it's built upon. Exactly. They want to separate And that's an awesome point. America in general, America wants to say it's the land of the free and the home of the brave, and it's all about justice and you can, you know, you can be whatever you want to be, and you can do whatever you want to do, and it's all this opportunity. No, that's all lies. Especially if you are a so-called child of Israel. If you are one of the 12 tribes of Israel, if you are so-called black, Latino, or Native American, none of that applies to you. That doesn't apply to us. America wants to present itself as if it's especially now. Especially now. Well, all of that's old. Now it's a level playing field and everybody's fine and nobody's oppressed and so on and so forth. It's an absolute lie. But that's the narrative for America. They don't even want you to think about that old stuff. But like I said, 9/11 happens, they're never going to forget. They give billions of dollars to Jewish people and Jewish Israelis. They give billions of dollars a year, dressing it up like it's tied to the Holocaust because they're going to never forget. But the minute we bring up our oppression and what we have dealt with for the last 400 or 500 years, oh, that's old stuff. Y'all got to get over that. I gotta get over that. I saw a brother in the school. He looked like he was in a mall or something. This was like early day or something. He looked like he was in a mall, and he was doing an interview. And the person was, I believe they were Palestinian, and he was talking about all of the crimes that had been committed against them with the bombings and the unalivings of young people and old people and babies and so on and so forth. And he was like, it's just wrong. And blah, 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 blah. And that's, nobody should be okay with this type of tone. And he was like, well, do you believe that justifies, the retaliation type of thing? He was like, yeah, because an eye for an eye is fine with me and blah, 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 blah. So then the brother asked me, he said, so do you feel like, black people should be mad at white people for what they did? And there was this long pause. And he was like, well, that's different. And this is what we don't understand. None of these nations feel like we should get justice for what we have been through. Why? Because all of them have a hand in some way, shape, or form with what we've been through. So sure, eye for an eye, justice, all of that until it's the 12 tribes of Israel. Once it's the 12 tribes of Israel, that's a little different. I don't know about that. And the sooner we wake up and understand that that's the full reality, the better off we will be. As soon as we wake up and understand and come into the Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge and understand what we're supposed to be doing, following the law, statutes, and commandments, following orders. When we understand that, then we'll be better off as a people. Then the Most High can provide the protection that we so need right now, but we don't get. All right. Let me see. All right. Okay, Sister Kim, checking in from 757. All right, Shalom. Shalom. Yahweh Shemala Tabashim Yahweh Shasa. Welcome. Absolutely. All right, let me see. We're going to have to get in the second part of this. We're going to have to do the second part next week when we get into the other birth of a nation that people are more familiar with. And that's the Nat Turner story. We're going to get into that also when we get a little bit more. Oh, Salaki, I know exactly what I want to show you. When it talks about them having a surge in membership of the KKK, I'm going to show you how, again, how cunning, Esau is, and how this was used. This was used to draw up and drive up membership. I think this is it. All right, I'm sure y'all can't see, but we're gonna get into it. So in just over 3 hours, the Griffin controversial epic film about the Civil War reconstruction is just going back over that. Ku Klux Klan has valiant saviors. Oh yeah, presents the Ku Klux Klan as valiant saviors. It says, but the birth of a nation's racially charged Jim Crow narrative, coupled with America's heightened anti-immigrant climate, led the Klan to align itself with the movie's success and use it as a recruiting tool. This was very purposeful. So it's hard to argue this. This was a distortion of history when the history books at the time said the same. So this was a narrative that was being presented. All right. It's easy to debunk it now, but back then that was part of the story. So adapted from the book The Klansman by Thomas Dixon Jr. And as Officer Yagadar said, the original name of the movie was The Klansman. They changed it after about a month. All right. Who was a classmate and friend of President Woodrow Wilson. The person who wrote this story initially was a classmate and friend of the president. His Birth of a Nation portrayed Reconstruction as catastrophic. It showed radical Republicans encouraging equality for Black people, who in the film are represented as uncouth, intellectually inferior, and predators of white women. And this racist narrative was widely accepted as historical fact. This goes back to what we were saying earlier. Esau's not always the most intelligent, objectively. And what's given to them, they soak up. This was accepted as if it was a documentary, and it was an absolute lie. So shortly after the Los Angeles launch, Thomas Dixon Jr. convinced President Wilson to screen the movie inside the White House, arguably the first time it was ever done. President Wilson reportedly said of the film, it was like writing history with lightning, which is the same thing we said earlier. And my only regret is that it is also terribly true. This is the president of their United States validating the lies that were in this piece of propaganda. The fact that he even showed the movie in the White House to the oppressor validated it anyway. That validated it anyway. What you mean, the president played this movie? Oh, I know it's got to be real. Then. The president played this movie. Slovakia maidservant? Okay. Go on and check in with your name, sis. Yahala Shamala Tabashim Yawashai. Let us know your name too, sis. I don't want to call you maidservant. Slovakia. Slovakia. With that, the water for checking in the class. Just let us know your name, all right? The water. Let me get to it. Of course, we're in the White House. All right. I think this is going to be it. Because again, just to let you know the power that this movie had at the time. Because William Joseph Simmons is considered to be the founder of the 1915 modern Ku Klux Klan. While recovering from a car accident, the local preacher, this guy's a preacher, a Christian, was essentially the founder of the modern day Ku Klux Klan. But he was a preacher in Georgia. He followed the birth of a nation nationwide success. It says there were KKK-inspired um, aprons, costume, and regalia that glorified the defunct organization. Simmons seized on the family's popularity to bolster the Klan's appeal again. The galloping Klan riding to the rescue, Salaki, which is again how the movie kind of ended. The pure spectacle of it all, says Lord, romanticized the KKK. The film boasted the idea that the Klan was there to save the South from savage black men sexually assaulting white women. A racist myth that would be propagated for years, and it's still propagated. It's still propagated. And then our brothers make it worse because then we want to go get a Becky. We want to go get a Becky, which is the worst thing you can do. The scripture said, do not give your daughters to their sons, and do not take on their daughters for your sons. That is absolutely what we should not be doing. But one of the first things our brothers do is get a little bit of success, and then they want to go get a Becky. All right. Salaki, the sister said, Kimberly Haywood. All right. So we got two Kims. All right. But the what? I guess we got two Kims. No sweat. Oh, okay. No sweat, sis. No sweat. I just wanted. I didn't want to keep using that title there. I didn't want to do that. I just need to know your name and plus you make sure you get your attendance. All right. The water for that. Okay, so it's just one. All right. You just got different handling. All right. No sweat. No sweat. The water, sir. All right. It says there was a. Oh, Shabbat. I ain't bringing it up yet. He says there was a good reason. This is a quote from him. He says a good reason as I have said, for making Thanksgiving Day November 25th, 1915. Now, this is going to let you know again, as we always say, we shouldn't be celebrating these holidays. Not Esau's holiday. He happy to do it, but look what he did on Thanksgiving. This day that supposedly everybody's saying we're supposed to come together and be thankful. No, Esau uses every tool he has to continue to oppress us. All right, and to continue to put himself in a position where we are on the bottom. So on November 25th, 1915, on Thanksgiving Day, he says he made that the occasion for burning the fiery cross. Something was going to happen in town next week, the premiere of Birth of a Nation, that would give the new order tremendous popular boost. It says, as planned, the word spread about the burning cross. Simmons also took out a newspaper ad about the KKK's revival and ran right alongside the announcement of Birth of a Nation. So what he did was he took this big cross and burned it on Thanksgiving Day, which was about 10 days before they were going to premiere the film in Atlanta. And so he made sure that sparked enough attention, and it got enough attention. And as you can see, he took out ads, ran them right next to the ad for Birth of a Nation. It says on opening night, Simmons and fellow Klansmen dressed in white sheets and Confederate uniforms paraded down Peachtree Street with hooded horses, firing rifle salutes in front of the theater. The effect was powerful, and screenings. The effect was powerful. And screenings in more cities echoed the display. It wasn't just here. This is the foundation of let's revive this Klan and make sure that we're using this video, this movie, to drive up our membership. It said the echo displays another the cities. It says including movie ushers donning white sheets. Klansmen also handed out KKK literature before and after the screenings. The NAACP protested, but the film's popularity was too strong. With black troops from World War I returning from France and the migration of black people to the north, there were new racial tensions in northern cities, like Chicago, Boston, and Philadelphia. There was no will in the north to enforce equality. Now that is something again that we don't know. The narrative is that the South was bad and the North was good. The narrative was that, well, as long as you could escape from the South and get to the North, you were good. But there was no will in the North to enforce equality. Sure, we're not going to necessarily have you in chattel slavery. If you're being honest, only because there's nothing you can do. You don't have any crops. But you want to be equal? No, we're not going to do that either. We're not going to do that either. This is the truth. They didn't want to do that either. So sure, even this film, which was about the lies of our people being a predator to the oppressor after the Civil War. It's all complete lies, but even in the North, it was accepted. It was accepted. So, Rocky, pull it back up real quick. It says, as the film continued to be screened and rescreened well into the 1920s, Larry says more Klan chapters formed and membership reportedly reached into the millions, spurred on by this movie. New Klansmen were shown the birth of a nation, and the film continued to be a recruiting tool for decades to come, which is what we read in the other article. This movie was the absolute worst, but it was a foundation for Hollywood, the film industry, and what it would grow into. When we look at films, I remember when Black Panther came out. When Black Panther came out with Chadwick Boseman, the first one, when it came out, I was not in the school, but I was still following. I was still looking at the videos, looking at the classes, but I was not. I hadn't put my brick in yet. All right, but I remember even then listening to Commander Junior Hanna break down how wicked that film was, how it was such a piece of propaganda against the so-called black people, and how the Hamite had to be the hero, but the brother from America was the biggest villain, was the main villain in the movie. That was such a piece of propaganda that I didn't see until I heard Commander Junior Hanna. And then I understood what the truth was, but it comes from this. It comes from the fact that that entire industry and that entity that is Hollywood is based on that. It's based on the propaganda that we are dangerous. We are to be feared, and because of that, we are to be aggressively addressed. We are to be unalived if necessary, kept in our place, absolutely destroyed. And that's what this movie did. That's what this movie presented. And that's what that industry presents. And as Officer Yagadar says, it's the baseline, it's the benchmark, it's the blueprint for all media sense, whether it be TV shows, movies, news reports, music. The vast majority of it is propaganda presented against our people. The absolute vast majority on it is propaganda against our people. And then when you take the fact that again, a lot of these oppressors in this country, they're not in tune with what goes on in reality. It's just whatever news channel that they like. As long as they tell them what they want to hear, then they're okay. long as they tell them that it's our fault and we should have just complied, then okay, well I guess it's their fault. They should have just complied. As long as they tell them that, well, you got that, they just, they're not pulling themselves up by the bootstraps and they're lazy and so on and so forth. Every stereotype that is presented to discredit the efforts and the benefit that so-called blacks, Latinos, and Native Americans have brought to this country, they're just okay accepting it. Why? Because that's who they are and that's how they operate. And that movie, The Birth of the Nation, it was the first. It was the proof. And so often as we're teaching these classes, we talk about how the oppressor moves against us or moved against us and how he continues to do the same thing. And again, that's why it's so important for us to know these things. All right. All right. And with that, we're going to get into the second part of this where we're going to get into some of the history of Nat Turner and why it's so important to know the truth about these scriptures and to get in the ISUPK so you can actually be in the truth and you can understand what the Bible is saying. All right. We're going to get into that next class. We're going to get to the security announcements right now. All right. All right, we're at ISUPK started on 1 West 125th Street, Harlem, New York, under Commander General Yohana. Rule for new brother and sister. So when a new brother or sister comes into the school, they are off limits for 6 months. They are to be saluted only. They are here to shed themselves of the world. If they need transportation, camp leader will arrange it. After 6 months, if a brother or sister has an interest in a particular person, he or she must get permission from the camp leader to speak to a brother or sister. There's another 6 months in which the brother and sister will court each other. After this 6 month period, the brother and sister will get permission from the camp leader to marry. Tithes, which is a commandment. You can find it in Numbers, the 18th chapter, verse 21, and also find it in Malachi, 3rd chapter, verses 8 through 10. It means tenth, and in the Hebrew, it's ma'ashara. 10% of any penny of any increase the Lord gives you. All right. You can give it to the Treasury Department. You can also go to isupk.com and you can pay your tithes directly there. Priest fund is a free will offering for the priest. It's not mandatory. Whatsoever amount you would like to give. Upcoming Holy Convocation days. I believe the next one is the Feast of Dedication or Hanukkah. That will be December 7th. It runs through the 15th. All right. And then after that, there is the feast. No, there's Purim, which will be, I believe, February of next year. I will get those dates. I'm sure, Yagaba, if you are still in here, if you could put those dates in the chat, you always have it, which I always appreciate. All right. And then after that, one after that is Passover, which is coming up April of next year. Make sure you are already making your preparations. It's going to be in Durham, North Carolina, which is not far at all. All right. There's no reason. Well, the distance is definitely not a reason not to make it if you are in the Virginia school. It's too easy to drive to North Carolina. I don't know about anybody else, but December 7th. That's the Feast of Hanukkah. I was asking about Purim. Slovakia, the water. Yeah, I don't know about anybody else, but listen, when you were in the world, driving for a party was nothing. Going out of town for a few days was nothing. You might just go out of town just to go to the club. You know what I mean? So that was something that we had no problem doing when we were in the world, especially with it being so close to where we are physically. There's no reason if you are in the Virginia school that you shouldn't be. Distance is not a reason anyway that you should not be able to make it to Passover this year. Most High in Christ, damn right, sis. Damn right. Kim says she will be there. Damn right. All right. And lastly, if any brother wants to become a trooper in the school, he needs to be in all black. That's black boots, shirts, pants, headband, and war scar. If you are not in the WADA, for RIM is February 22nd and 23rd. The WADA. If you are not in Virginia, then you need to get in contact. If you want to be a trooper in the school, you need to make sure you get in contact with the school that's in your zone. If you are in Virginia, call the school number, get in contact with either Officer Yaraj Shamath or Captain Natazak Mashad. Let them know that that's what you want to do. All right. This thing is coming. The end is coming. These second world, the third world war is clearly on the horizon. Now we don't know how long that's going to take, but these things are moving. These things are absolutely moving. There are multiple nations that are positioning themselves to come up against America, and that's it. Listen, get in the ISUPK, get in the truth, get in this body. Do what you got to do to get in this body. Put your brick in. Start following law, statutes, and commandments. Make sure you are actually in the truth and not outside, so you can have the protection that we need and that we will have in this body when it all goes down. All right. And with that, I'm gonna give a courtesy salute to the brothers. Shalom, Salakia. Shalom. Yahweh Shabbat Salakia. How about Shem Shabbat Thumb? I'm gonna get there. And to the sisters, Yahweh Shemala Thun by Shem Yahweh Shai. All right. Shalom, Israel.